My name is Eric Galko. I'll be moderating this panel on NFL agents panel number two. We're going to have on Molly, Jeff, and Jordan here momentarily. I'm not sure if their cameras are on quite yet. Let me check here. There they are. Hey guys. So we'll get started. For everyone on the call and those of you just joined from the previous session, my name is Eric Galko. I'll be moderating this panel on NFL agents. And by way of introduction, I'm not the star of the show, but by way of introduction, I am the owner and president of Optimum Scouting. I am not an agent, but I have consulted for agencies for most of the last 15 years, along with being a sports executive, most recently with the XFL. But again, I'll be the one kind of playing point guard here. We've got three really talented, very different backgrounds, but I think can add a lot of value to what life is like being an NFL agent, a little bit getting started, but really what lessons they've learned they can kind of impart on all of you on this call who want to learn more or potentially be NFL agents. So if we can go to each one of you on the call here, Molly, Jordan, and Jeff. We'll start with Molly and then Jeff and then Jordan. Just give everyone your full name, the agency you work with, and then what law school you graduated from. And Molly, you can start first.
Thanks, Eric. You can hear me okay, right?
Yep.
Cool. My full name is Molly McManimie. I'm with Caric Sports Management. We're based in Las Vegas, and I did law school at Chapman University.
Awesome. Jeff?
Hello, good evening. My name is Jeffrey Whitney. I'm the president and a founder of the Sports and Entertainment Group based in Washington, D.C. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Wisconsin.
Awesome. And Jordan?
What's up, everyone? I'm down in Atlanta, Element Sports Group, and I went to Elon University.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys making the time here to come on, and we'll have questions towards the end, but I've got a bunch of questions that I'm curious about hearing from what you guys and your experiences are. But I want to get right to the beginning of when you guys were agents. And I think most, if not all the people on this call may have an interest in being an NFL agent after law school. What was something when you just started out, what was one of the first mistakes you made that you appreciate now in hindsight that you learned from that lesson? What's something that you learned early on that like, hey, I messed this one up, but I know I'm not gonna make the mistake again, that you can kind of impart on people? And if we can start with you, Molly, as I see you thinking there, if you want to go first, that'd be great.
I think the biggest thing is being overzealous about just anyone. I know when you're first starting, you would be happy basically to sign anyone because you're just trying to get your feet wet. But I think it's important before you do that to identify specifically who you are as an agent and therefore who you want to work with. And that's all about figuring out your core values and, the type of personality that maybe you mesh with. So really figuring that out before diving into signing people because, you're so eager at first. And so you can make the problem is in this business, your mistakes are always going to end up being financial mistakes because of the money you have to invest in these guys. So I would say just being really true to yourself, like knowing I should have done a better job of hashing that out with myself before diving into offering, someone a certain amount of money in order to pay for their training and sign them and everything.
We're going to come back to cost for sure later on, because I think it's a big part of age. I think people don't appreciate coming out of law school. But Jeff, what's one of the first mistakes you made that you appreciate now in hindsight? You're on mute, Jeff, by the way. There you
go. No, well, I think Molly probably hit the nail on the head with what I think all of us would agree upon is a kind of a costly mistake that I think we all make early on. I think for me, my a little bit different because I practiced law for 12 years, 13 years before I became an agent. So I was a little bit older when I got certified and became an agent. What I wish I would have known is that, and I think what I appreciate more every day is that the vast majority of what my day is spent is not negotiating contracts. It's people management. It's management skills. One day I'm a psychiatrist. The next day I'm a marriage counselor. But just really understanding the full breadth of what an agent is. I mean, we wear many hats, and many hats is probably an understatement. But I think one of the things that I really just kind of, even again, after having practiced law for a long time, just underappreciated. I thought I'd be, negotiating contracts all day long. And I think it's safe to say that's probably and Molly and Jordan will probably agree. I mean, that's probably the least of what I do. I bet 90% of my time is spent in some type of management role, putting out fire. And the least part of my job is actually the contract negotiation part. So not necessarily a mistake, but something I certainly did not appreciate, I think, fully.
Yeah. And Jordan, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Molly and Jeff for sure. I would say one of the mistakes I made personally when I first got started was in the recruiting process. So I was a college athlete, and I remembered kind of how busy, just being a college athlete was. So I was maybe too relaxed in the recruiting process as far as building the relationship with the prospective client. So we'd have a good conversation. In a few weeks, we talk again. But between those weeks, a lot of things are happening. And there's a lot of other agents that are going to get involved with that prospective client. So I thought, now, of course, we're much better on, building the relationship throughout the process. So that was a big thing that I learned really quickly, that while you're not talking to them, someone else is. So that was a big thing for me.
Money, not a lot of time for contracts, and building that relationship takes a lot of work and effort. I know you guys all do a lot of that. I want to go to the money, which is where Molly, I point this out because when I talk to, especially students in law school who want to become agents, I mentioned the contract piece first, but I also mentioned the money. It's almost more of a financial, decision a lot of times than anything else. And for those of you on the call who may not know all that goes into it, I'll give an overview. When you want to sign a player out of college, there's a lot of financial costs. There's a training cost, which could be anywhere from a couple $1,000s to $25,000, $30,000 for one player to get trained in the draft process. There's a stipend for players to live week to week, month to month. There's marketing guarantees, which are basically an agreement that, hey, the agent will recoup the marketing money you make after the fact, but you get this kind of upfront so the player can feel financially okay. And other wants and needs a player may have, unique situation the player may have. So a lot of money goes into signing a player before that player ever, gets drafted in the NFL, nonetheless signs his contract. So, a lot of players have a very high acquisition cost, I call it. And I want to ask, each of you, because I think all of you are on the same page. I think all of you have this where it's as much of a financial decision sometimes as it is how much you like the player or like the person. So talk a little about how you and your agency deal with that financial aspects of business, because I know all three of you have great relationship with your clients, but still, like, that recruiting process and that ongoing, financial plays a big part of this. So if we can start with you again, Molly, and then we'll switch it up. Talk about how you and your agency deal with the financial aspects of the business, especially in recruiting potential clients.
I mean, what you do, Eric, is a big part of it. It's, getting the right information from the right people who you trust and who you think are good scouts and can really identify talent. I mean, obviously I didn't play football, so as much as I'm a football fan, I understand the game. I'm not a talent evaluator, so you have to gather information that can really help steer you in the right direction, as far as knowing, okay, what is that tipping point with a certain player that I'm able to invest in to where I am going to see a return on my investment sooner than later. And it's not an exact science, because you're going to have hits and you're going to have misses. You have guys who end up being super low maintenance and they don't need a lot. They live at home or something where you don't have to pay their rent, or some big expense is taken out of the equation, but they still get drafted in the spot that you thought they were. And so you have this chunk where now you're not waiting to recoup that as long as you would have had you been paying their rent or something. So it's a lot of, it's like anything else, in business, it's cost first reward, and you have to figure out what the players, realistic range is, not where they think they're going to get drafted, but where you think, based on the information you've gathered, actually places them, and then figuring out the dollar amount that you're comfortable with, whether that's the dollar amount that will get you into the green year 1, year 2, year 3. And every agency is different in that regard, because there's obviously the huge agencies that have a ton of capital. And so they're probably it's easier for them to make those decisions a little loosely. Whereas, mid-size or smaller agencies, that capital is too precious to just throw away on someone who you're not even sure is going to get drafted, or just has too much of a big range. So it really is just like a cost analysis, like you like anything else in life.
It's a lot like buying a stock where that stock's got to be positive in 6 months versus two negative, or an Enron and down to zero, the player just is gone. So Jeff, we'll go to you. What kind of thought process goes into to your process and financially?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It really is kind of a stock analysis, a hedge fund analysis. It really is. You're trying to prospect, right? You're trying to find folks that a less investment will end up being more of a reward. There's really a mix. Look, different firms do it differently. And look, I get a call probably every couple of weeks from a young agent who reaches out to me and says, hey, I've got this top 10 prospect, first round prospect. He wants $200,000. He wants this, he wants that. Would you be willing to partner with me? You all have experience. It's a costly business, and it's an arms race. And Molly meant there's some firms who have, they're not necessarily in this business to make money, it seems, and certainly are willing to give players whatever it takes to sign them. And for us, me and my partner, our business, it's us. And so every dollar that we spend, it comes out of our pocket. It comes out of my son's college fund, right? And so we're very careful in how we do it. I don't begrudge those firms. If that's their business model and that's what they want to do, then fine. If you want to give, potential prospects money, marketing guarantees, Christmas bonuses, if that's what works for you, then by all means, go ahead and do it. Just for us, we've just taken, I think, a very conservative approach in how we're going to, get clients. We're in the business of trying to earn the trust of players and families, not trying to buy it. And that's us. That's our business model. But I tell young agents all the time, you got to figure out what works for you. And if what works for you is doing deals for free and paying large, Christmas bonuses or marketing guarantees, if that's what you want to do and that's the path you want to take, then look, do it by all means. But don't call me because I'm not in the business of doing that. But the cost, it gets costlier every year. I think everybody on the call can agree that these costs are escalating. And so for us, we've just decided that we're going to play in a certain lane and not get involved with some of the other things. But again, that's just our business prerogative, and others have their way of doing it.
I got to get one of these Christmas bonuses you're talking about. These sound nice. But no, I think just for the people on the call, all three, Caric Sports, Element Sports, Sports Entertainment, are all, similar in terms of they're not one of the biggest firms that are going to spend a lot of money on players. They're trying to pick the right players and the right investments. So hopefully that's a good understanding for everyone on the call that's learning from these three agents. Let's go to you, Jordan. How do you guys at Element kind of talk about those business decisions and especially the recruiting process for college players for the NFL draft?
Yeah, I think we have a similar philosophy. I mean, we have very strict guidelines and on what we're willing to do for a prospect in the pre-draft process. Once, we're having conversations with a family or a player that, it gets outside of that, I think that's when we would make a decision whether, usually we probably back off that player if it's getting too costly. I echo everything Molly and Jeff said. We're not in the business of, just being the highest bidder for players. So we're looking for guys who, fit Element and, buy into what, we're going to do for them in the future. And usually it works out. So, like I said, similar philosophy. We're not in that business of, auctioning off for players.
Yeah, no. And just people on the call know that if a player goes undrafted and he doesn't make a roster, he's in the practice squad, as an agent, you can't recoup that money from practice squad either. So if you put 25, 30 grand into a player and that player's, looking for a job in September, that money is gone for you. And as an agent, you still want to help that player as much as possible. So cost plays a big role. I want to shift gears a little bit. And something I say a lot is it's better to know a guy than to be the guy. And meaning that it's more valuable to have the right people around you than do all the work yourself. And I think all three of you guys have a lot of great resources. I wanted to ask each one of you, and we'll go, Molly, one more time, you can go first, is who is someone on your team? That could be at the agency, it could be a partner, it could be someone in your personal life, but who is someone that is on your team that adds a lot of value for reasons that maybe aren't immediately clear?
I kind of have two, but our president, Steve Caric, who started the company, I mean, he's invaluable. Like, there's no real way to quantify his value. Because he started the company, but also because of the type of agent he's been over his career. And he is the type of person in this business who has a lot of respect, but is still a really good guy. So he has respect because he does good contracts and he negotiates, and people respect what he does in those negotiations. But he also is a good human, so he has those relationships across the league. And I think for me coming in under his wing, I can't again put into like any type of words how valuable that was for me, because having the Caric Sports name attached to me, I was able to get that same respect immediately that takes years usually to earn, because people knew Steve is not going to hire someone who doesn't share those same type of traits and values that he does. And of course, then over the last 5 years, I've earned, it myself. But yeah, I can't like put into words how valuable he is. But we also have a guy in our office that does contract work for us. And that's also invaluable because he spends, basically all of his time doing that. But I would say, just if I had to pick one, it would be Steve, just because of everything he created. But the main reasons are the respect that he has given our company as a whole because of who he is and how he ran his business. Similar to what they both said about, the type of people you recruit. When you recruit a certain type of kid over time and you treat people with respect over time, people start to know, like, okay, if this kid signs with this agency, they're probably a good kid. So overall, just all the work Steve put in, it's just invaluable that he provided me that immediately in my career.
Yep. There's a point that agents reach that instead of you talking to teams are talking to you, and Steve has certainly earned that respect in the industry. Jeff, who's someone, I know you have a big team, pretty big team, at least a lot of people you work with, but who's someone on your team, maybe aside from Adisa, who I know you're partners with, that you rely on, that adds a lot of value to you in maybe a surprising way?
You know what, it's particularly, I've been doing this over a decade now, and for me, just what's been amazing is just in that 10-year span, just how much these players really stress, heart put on marketing. Every player thinks they're a brand. Have no idea what that means, but they're all thinking they're LeBron. It doesn't matter if they played at some small school you've never heard of. Every player sees themselves as some type of kind of marketing machine, right? And so it's taken me a couple of years, because I'm old, to really fully appreciate it, because I'm really not on social media. I barely know I just figured out what the blue check means. The blue check is important to these guys, but I don't deal with any of that. So look, obviously, aside from my partner who brought me into this industry, our marketing staff just does a really, really good job. Our marketing directors, a young lady, Alexandra Maaza, and she has our deputy is a young lady, Chanel Young, and we have a couple of 3 other employees that work in the department. But just the value add from having them be able to really, obviously they do a fabulous job in getting our players deals, but really in the recruiting process, particularly this year with just us having to do most of our meetings through Zoom and really having the marketing department really be involved. It's kind of opened my eyes to just how important they are, particularly given that, this kind of generation of players, they speak a different kind of language, and they're often moved more by the idea or the concept of marketing than they are by the fact that who you represent or what's the latest contract you've done, or anything. They're truly moved by the marketing. So our marketing department really, I think, does a fabulous job in that regard.
How about you guys, Jordan?
Yeah, so outside of Michael, of course, I'd say Ryan Ruff. And Ryan leads our client services department. So I like to say that Ryan makes the impossible possible. So those late night requests for flights and tickets to games and, the basketball games and, different things, anything you can think of, they're calling her. And she makes it happen. And Ryan is invaluable to us. I mean, she's planned cruises, engagements. She's done so many things. I give her credit whenever I can. So Ryan Ruff will be a person that's invaluable to Element.
Yeah, I think all 3 agencies on the call here have a good team around them. But I think for anyone who's starting off in the business, having good people around you, if they're not employees or coworkers, but people to lean on, I think is a really smart move, because it's hard to do this alone. And as all 3 have pointed out, there's a financial cost. There's also a lot of time going on. It's not negotiating contracts and watching football games. It's a lot of other things as well. And having good people are really important. So I want to go back to how you guys started as agents, and not necessarily your story, but I assume most people on this call are in school right now and they're in a 3L year, and they want to be an agent right afterwards. Do you guys recommend taking the agent certification test along with the bar exam and immediately do something different before being an agent? I know all three of you guys had different paths, and we'll get to those a little bit later, but what is your recommendation for someone who wants to be an agent on they're finishing the law school up right now, they're taking the bar exam in July, so that's still possible with COVID going on. What should they be thinking? I want to switch to you, Jeff. You can go first this time. We'll go to Jordan next.
See,
You're on mute, Jeff. Sorry. There you
I don't even know how to work my computer. I have to get my wife to come down and help me. But look, this may be in the minority of view or opinion, but for me, if you really, really want to be an agent and you really want to work in sports, and this comes from a guy, I've had literally every job, legal job. I clerked for a federal judge. I worked for the largest firm in the state of Alabama. I've done plaintiff's work, defense work, all before becoming an agent. I say that to say, if you want to become an agent, and this is me, and go take the agent exam and start being an agent. I would not worry, and again, this is my opinion, I wouldn't worry about the bar or anything else. If this is truly what you want to do, 100% you want to be an agent, get started, don't waste time. I'll often talk to people and they're like, but then if this doesn't happen and that doesn't happen, at least look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, take the bar or be barred, but if you want to be an agent, the most important thing you can have, the way you can be marketable to the three firms that are represented here, is to be certified. You can get on the road, you can start recruiting, you can do all those things. So for me, don't play it safe. If this is what you want to do, graduate, let's go for it, go get your certification. Don't stop with the NFL, get FIBA certified, get NBA certified, get as many certifications as you can to make yourself as marketable as possible. And then if, push comes to shove, you'll have those certifications you can work for yourself. So that's my advice, is just go for it. Don't have plan B, plan C. If this is your space, go do it.
How about you, Jordan? What's your take on what you should do? You're 3L right now, want to be an agent at some point. Is it right away or is it wait a bit?
No, I completely agree with Jeff. I think you should go for it. I think if it's really what you want to do, I think you should step out there and try to do it. I do think that, it's useful to go ahead and take the bar exam if you have maybe a slow start, or if you have trouble, because you got to pay the bills. But I agree. Like, go ahead and get certified. Again, like Jeff said, it's going to make you more marketable to the firms, and it's going to better your chances of getting a job. And then if you think about it, I mean, this is a crazy business. You never know what could happen. Maybe if you don't have the financial backing, maybe a prospective client just falls in love with you and gets your career jump started from early on. So I think you should go for it. I think you should get into it as soon as possible. If you aren't able to do that, I think you should do something related to sports or related to agency work, maybe marketing, or maybe, client services, like I mentioned Ryan does. Like, you should do something to kind of move forward to your agent career.
Interesting, because I know your background wasn't quite that, but we'll come back to your background in a minute, Jordan. Molly, we'll end on you. What's your advice to those 3Ls who want to be an agent?
I'll echo what they said. I would say for, like you said, if you're someone who has already figured out that this is exactly what you want to do, I think you should definitely go feet first, take the exam as soon as you can, because Jordan touched on a really good point. You never know if you have an old neighbor or a family friend or something who comes to you and says, hey, I have, a son or a friend of a friend, and he's going to be a junior next year, a senior next year. And that, like, the way you get going in this business is you're going to have something like that happen for you. And if you don't, you're going to need years of maybe taking on those undrafted guys or the guys that aren't as highly sought after to get your experience. And maybe one of those hit, on their second contract or something. So the reason you should do it right away is like what Jordan said, you can't do anything really in this business. And like Jeff said, you can't recruit legally if you aren't certified. So it's better to have it in your back pocket. But I just do like to say it with the caveat that I personally had my job going into my 3L. So I feel like I have a little bit of a biased opinion on that, mostly because I was very fortunate in my path. But with that said, what Jordan said, I took on a client services role first. So my initial job and I still am the vice president of client services at my agency, but before I became certified, the way I was able to prove myself to Steve was through client services work. So I agree totally with what he said with that too. Once you get into the spot or into this sphere, if you can prove that you can do any job well, you're more likely then to find an agency that's going to invest in you as an agent as well. So just go for it.
Eric, can I add something real quick?
Wow, 3 for 3. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
As the elder spokesperson here, because I think I'm probably older than everyone here, this is just some kind of life advice. I just turned 50, so now I'm philosophical and all that. But I wish someone had told me this, though, when I was getting out of law school. I wish I would have had some of this advice, which is this, man. Look, there's a reason why, look, we all law school, we went. There's a reason why most lawyers are unhappy. We know that. It's one of the professions with the least amount of satisfaction on the globe, right? Life is short. Literally, it seems like yesterday I was getting out of law school. Now I'm 23 years out. I'm doing what I want to do. And I always, even in law school, I was like, man, it would be a cool job and it'd be great, work with athletes. But then, you know, they're like, no, you should be a federal law clerk and you should do this and you should do. And then I went on this path. And the law is one of these things, man, and trust me, because I've worked a lot of places, that if you don't choose what you want to do, if you don't chart your own course, someone will chart it for you. You will end up in a job and you'll be doing ERISA work and you are clearly not cut out to do. I got many friends that are partners in places and they've spent the last 25 years unhappy and not satisfied with their work. And so I say that to say, just, man, find your happiness and go for it. And look, if that means that, you know, you got to wait tables and do some other things to make ends meet, but life is short. You will be 50, trust me, before you know it. I spent literally 13 years as a disgruntled litigator. I knew from day one I didn't want to do litigation, but I went to a big firm. They chose me to be in litigation, and I spent 13 years as a disgruntled, unhappy. To one day, my wife literally was like, if you come home and complain one more time, you just, and so my point is this: find your happiness and go for it. It goes fast. Lawyers, again, we're just an unhappy. Find your piece of happiness, and you don't want to be 50 years old and looking back and saying, how the hell did I become an ERISA attorney? So that's my little 2 cents as an old grizzled veteran.
Wow, just crushing ERISA attorneys on the call, Jeff. So sorry to the ERISA attorneys on the call.
Look, they would all agree with me, trust me.
So each of you have different styles. And I think all 3 agents, Caric, Element, and Sports Entertainment Group, all have a little bit different value add. Originality and differentiation is so important as an agent. I tell young agents, working hard, being personalized, always there for your clients, like that's a requirement. You can't make that your differentiation in any sort of major way. You got to sell clients on more than that. I'll start with you, Jeff, and then go to Jordan and Molly. What would you define as your style as an agent, and whatever way you think is best to do that? And what do you believe you and your agents differentiator are in the market when you're trying to recruit clients?
So my partner and I are both, you know, at our core, both still practicing attorneys. We're both corporate attorneys. My partner actually was an ERISA attorney, so I can say those jokes because I know. And I was a litigator. And I think for us, the kind of value add is the fact that you know, we are good at problem solving. I mean, obviously we're good at the agent work. We do, I think, great contracts, and we do. But when it comes to actual problem solving, many of the issues that the players are faced with have nothing to do with their contract. There are tax issues. There's wealth preservation issues, and I think for us, just having that kind of background, I think allows us to have sometimes, you know, different conversations that other agents and agencies might be having with the clients because they don't have that experience. So I think really one of the differentiators for us is kind of the fact that we provide a little bit more of advice and counsel, I think, than some other agents do because of our backgrounds.
Yeah, I think if you guys look up Sports Entertainment Group and who your clients are, you've had some real problems to solve the last 6 to 12 months on some of your guys too, and you guys have really made it work. Let's go to you, Jordan. What's your style as an agent? You mentioned as a former player, but your style and then what you believe your and Element's differentiator is in the market.
Yeah, I think I'll start with you know, just Element as a whole, but I think that what makes us different really is a very customized approach. And, we don't take, hundreds of clients. And I think that's for a reason. And I think that's because each client, they're a different person. They deserve a customized representation style, right? Their problems, their needs, they're all different. So whenever we're having a meeting with a client, it's like they're our only client, right? And we're handling their issues differently than we handle the next guy. So I think that's probably the thing that differentiates us from, other folks. And my style, I don't know. I think that my style is, I just want to add as much value to the client's life as possible. And I know we're going to get into our backgrounds later, so that might be kind of, I don't want to segment into another question, but when I think about, what I do, individually for clients is that I've seen the NFL from a lot of different vantage points, and I can counsel them on the business of the NFL, I think differently than other folks. So I guess when we get to that question, you'll kind of understand what I'm saying, but I think that's my style, so to speak.
Hell of a teaser, Jordan. Molly, what's your style and Caric Sports differentiator?
So I'll start with Caric Sports as a whole. Similar to what Jordan was saying about his company, is we're very much it's customized for each client from the time that they sign with us till the time it's done. It's like you said, there's so many aspects of Caric Sports that I think now are more widespread, which is positive for the whole industry, that you are seeing more representation and choices for guys out there that are people that really care, and people that do, give you personalized attention, and you're not just another name, on their client list. But for me personally, I mean, I have, I'm one of 40 women that are certified by the NFLPA. And so I just have learned to utilize being a woman and my femininity to my, it's a strength, I think. I think a lot of people ask me, what makes it hard, but I've turned it into something that other people can't provide. And so I think just some of the traits that, women have inherently, when I lean into those and I use those, in order to be a better agent for the guys, that's kind of what ends up setting me apart. Because the trust that we build might be more similar, to someone else in their life than like their moms or their girlfriends or whoever it is in their life that's important to them. And we also, we have I guess this is Caric Sports as a whole. We really do have a family atmosphere. I know pretty much everyone says that, but we get to know, their families very well and stuff. So I think when it's all said and done, these guys, and I'm sure Jeff and Jordan feel the same, they feel like your brothers, and, you would really do anything to see them succeed. And you take that responsibility, just, it's such an honor. And so when they feel like family and your brother and stuff, you would really do anything for them. So I think it's just, it comes off authentic and genuine because we really do care at the end of the day.
I think the family piece is something a lot of agents say, but I think all three of you guys in your agencies do it. And I know that because when I work at the XFL as the VP of Player Personnel, I've talked to each one of you guys for clients that we're not going to make any revenue for you guys in the agency, and how hard you guys work. And that's really what a good agent is not doing it for the money, but doing it because you want to see your clients succeed. So as Jordan teased, I want to get to a bit of an individual question for each one of you guys, and then we'll go to some questions here. I'll start with you, Molly, because you brought it up. So I looked it up. There's about 900 registered NFL agents at this point, and a little over 20, I think, as of right now, are women with an active NFL client. So very, very few women that are having active NFL clients and working day to day as an agent. Do you have something in particular that you've learned so far that you can kind of instill to women on the call who want to be agents, those 3 L's going to be agents in the future, that you learned? You mentioned it being a strength. What's something that you can take away and say, hey, this is what I learned early on that actually made this a benefit? What can you convey to those women on the call?
Okay, so with anything in life, if you come prepared and you come to the table knowing your stuff, just roll with it. If a guy is taking a meeting with you, then you've already passed that hurdle of that initial shock of, oh, this is a woman and not the typical person I'm, sitting across from at the table when it comes to picking my agent. And so the more you're worried about it, or the more you're trying to over impress, you're going to come off as, insecure or unprepared, or just like you don't belong. And so, what I found is early on, I was really scared maybe to say the wrong thing, or that they would think I don't know enough about the sport or the business. And, luckily I have a fantastic mentor in Steve. And one of the main things he's always instilled in me is to be assertive and confident. And so, and again, having him as my support system, I feel like that's instilled a lot of confidence in me. And I'm very passionate about what we do at Caric Sports. And I think that comes across in a good and confident way. But I talked to a few of my clients that not only I have signed personally, but that I was in on, like the final meeting for, and that signed with our company. And I remember one client in particular, his brother told me that I was one of them. And this was the first year I was certified. So I was very right. I was like, he just said, my mom said you were one of the main reasons that we pushed my brother to sign with you, because you were a strong woman. She loved there was a strong woman on the team. And the second you opened your mouth, you knew exactly what you were talking about. And I wish I would have believed that about myself before he said that. But once he did, I forged forward, I think, with a lot more confidence in who I am and what I do. And just like, as much as being a woman is hard, it's hard for these guys too. Like signing a player period is hard every single year. It never gets easier. And so it's tough for them to sign players. It's tough for me to sign players. And at the end of the day, you have to be okay with the idea that if someone doesn't take a meeting with you or doesn't end up signing with you, it might not be because you're a woman. It might just be because you're not a good fit. Just like they get told no, probably as much as I get told no. So you can't wallow in that too much, and you have to just be confident that the right players will be cool with having a woman agent and that they'll believe in what you do personally.
I think for women and men in the call too, that lesson of be prepared to hear no a lot is a pretty common one every agent would appreciate. So Jordan, you worked, this is your background, right? You worked for the Redskins in the Washington football team. They were the Redskins at the time. I can say that. I didn't get it wrong. In 2017 for a short time, then a major law firm, and then their sports practice, and then you went to Element Sports, where you are now. Is there anything that you learn in those 3-4 different steps that have helped you kind of prepare as an agent? Most people on this call that want to be agents, right, won't have the benefit of working for an NFL team on that side a little bit and have the kind of experience you had, but give kind of a crash course on what that experience taught you and has made you become a better agent, if anything at all.
Yeah, for sure. I was also at the Lions too, way back.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that I learned a little something about, that helped me in all those experiences, right? And I think when I talk about, adding value, it's like you said, I work for the Lions and for the Redskins. So I've been in a front office, in a player personnel department, evaluating players, doing contracts on that side. So I'm able to tell our clients here and say, hey, look, this is how it goes when you set the draft board. Like I've been there. And I also worked for that, that law firm for a while, for a couple of years, and we represented the NFL. So again, I saw the NFL from another vantage point. So for 2 years, I was involved in the inner workings of the NFL from a legal perspective. And, I learned a very premium style of representation while I was there, because it was like this, the oldest Wall Street law firm in the country. And representing the league, I felt that, of course, the players deserve the same quality of representation. And, I searched for an agency that was doing it that way. But I think, even going back to the agency stuff, when I worked at one agency in North Carolina before I went to Element, I was working at those agencies in different capacities. So my first stint at Element, I was doing marketing endorsement deals. So I saw that side of the business. So today I'm able to, talk to my clients, and I'm intelligent about every aspect of their representation. And I'm able to say things and share things with them, experiences with them that maybe other agents can't, because they didn't have those experiences. And I think that, when I talk to law students, I always tell them, whatever you're doing right now, keep your pitch in mind, and you want to build up those experiences that are going to add value to their clients is really what I mean. I'm going to compete with, Molly and Jeff. I better have something to say. You know what I mean? So I better be able to talk about the Lions and the law firm and the, multiple agencies I worked for if I'm going to have a chance. So I think that for the students on the call, if you have an opportunity to do some things that will help you, and not only help you competitively, but will help your clients, I think you should take advantage of those. And all those experiences help me.
Having perspective matters so much. If it's for actually knowing the answer, be able to bullshit your way through a marketing discussion, having those experiences certainly can help, both in recruiting as well as knowing the right ways to go about it. So Jeff, to you, I know you recently, and you and Sports Entertainment Group have started working in the basketball space in the agent world, and just kind of starting that out right now. Does it feel a bit like being a new agent again in some ways, because you're kind of learning the basketball industry after you know the football industry for the last decade? And what have you learned or relearned by diving into another sport as an agent?
Well, fortunately, we hired two young agents to do a lot of the heavy lifting and a lot of the travel. We hired a couple of guys with some NBA background. But yeah, it's been exciting, I will say, to really kind of have to master kind of a new area to, obviously we've got great relationships on the NFL side, but to try to kind of mimic that on the NBA side with relationships with scouts and front office personnel. It's been, in many ways, I think it's been refreshing and reinvigorating for us as an agency. And then we've hired some folks that have brought some new energy to our firm as well. So we've really enjoyed the last few months. We've signed a few players this year, a couple that will be possible draft picks in a couple of weeks. So it's been a kind of a good first kind of year, kind of entree into this, and hopefully are going to kind of brick by brick kind of build the practice just as we did the football practice. So we're excited about that, but it's been fun to kind of have to relearn some things. I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, and Molly and Jordan, look, it's about client service. It's about providing the highest level of service to your client, we've got some boxing clients, we've got a couple of pro tennis clients. Ultimately, the negotiations, kind of the negotiation, you kind of figure that out along the way. But what's consistent really is just remaining true to who you are as an agent and who you are as an agency, and really just taking care of your clients a certain way. And I think that's really what's kind of helped us kind of branch off into some of these areas, particularly basketball, is because of the type of services that we provide and the type of relationships that we have. And so when folks were kind of cross-checking and trying to figure it out, I mean, fortunately for us, we've been around for a long time, so folks kind of know who we are and how we work. But ultimately, I think what's helped us is just, we what we say we are, who we say we are, that's who we are. There's nothing in between, and we're consistent across the board. So I know it's a long answer, but yeah, it's been fun to kind of do something a little bit different.
And you had a guy like George Fant, who played basketball in college, college, now is pro in the NFL as an offensive lineman too. So you're also mixing the two really well. So let's get to some questions. We got a bunch of questions here. We'll get through as many as we can. We'll start with John Nucci from Penn State Law. He says, I'm curious how agents go about balancing the personal relationships they develop with athletes versus having to be realistic about those athletes' value to a franchise in the NFL. Basically, how do you talk to your clients and make them feel confident and help them develop, but also making sure that their value is realized for themselves as well as to an NFL team? So let's go to you first, Molly. How would you go about balancing? How do you go about balancing that relationship with the expectations?
I think if you're honest from day one, they learn to buy into what you have to say because they see it play out over time. So if you have a guy who you think is probably going to go somewhere around the 4th or 5th round, and he actually does, and he learns, okay, they were telling me that because that's what actually was going to happen, not because they don't think that, I'm as good as the guys who went in the 1st round. It's just, when you present them with realistic info and it comes into fruition, they start to trust you over time. So every time you're real with them and truthful with them, they're more susceptible to hearing the truth over time. And so when it does come, time to negotiate a second contract, or, if they get cut or something and you're explaining to them what their expectations should be to get back on a team, they're more willing to hear that info, and they know you're not saying it just to be a jerk or because you don't believe in them. It's just the real info that's coming from the league. And if it is a second contract situation, I mean, that's conversations you should start having with them way before it actually starts, so that they're really aware of their market and, some of the comps that are out there, so that when the first offer comes in, they're not totally shocked and blown away by the fact that either they think you're undervaluing them or the team is. They kind of know where it's going to come in. So it's all about communication and being realistic from the very beginning.
Jordan, what do you think for that question? Balancing the athlete's ability and your relationships with the athletes versus, setting realistic expectations with them and the team.
Yeah, I would agree with, Molly. I mean, I think honesty is key in that, building that relationship and that trust. I like to talk ball because I played the game and I've been in the, in the front offices. So I think that credibility that gives me helps me a lot. And I'm like, look, this is how, this is how it is. And this is where we see, this is what we think might happen. And I think they're more susceptible to hearing that. And I think if you say it directly and say it, eye to eye with them, they don't think it's BS. You know what I mean? They appreciate it. So I think if you've got someone that's understanding and they trust you, it's not a problem at all.
To kind of spin this to you, Jeff, in a different way, knowing you've got all 32 NFL GMs on speed dial. What is your relationship like in talking about your clients to the teams and making sure you're advocating for your client, but also talking with them in a way that you're not, saying my guy's a first round pick when you know he's a fourth round pick, saying my guy's worth $20 million when you know the market says 5. How do you balance, your belief of your client and advocating for them, but also, making sure you're being realistic with the NFL teams you're talking to?
I mean, and for us, look, very much what Molly and Jordan said. So the conversation's always starts with the client. Like the first negotiation you have is always with the client, because every one of the clients, it could be the 53rd dude on the roster, and he's saying, I should be getting paid like Tom Brady. That's just the reality. And so the first negotiation is always with the player and the player's family, just understanding, again, this is a transparent business, right? We know what everybody else makes. So it shouldn't be, it's not rocket science, right? Even though it's difficult sometimes to have those conversations. That same type of transparent conversation, that same type of honest communication also has to go with the teams. I mean, you can't bluff people, right? You can't lie to people. Look, this is a small world and it's a small circle, right? I mean, guy's here tomorrow, he's here, he's with the Lions one day, he's with Tampa the next. And so for us, we always just try to be honest and shoot straight, first and foremost with our clients and their families, but also with the teams. Look, if our guy is at this market and this is his rate, look, a good example is this last year, George Fant was a free agent. You mentioned that he was a basketball player. He'd only started 24 games. He'd shown some glimpses of being starter material. We had a bunch of conversations with him to begin with to let him know what we thought his market was after doing a bunch of comps and a bunch of research. But when talking to teams, here's the thing. Teams are going to have differing opinions on what they think your player is, right? But we weren't bluffing. We really thought he was a guy who could command $10 million a year based on what we knew about the market for tackles. Number one, there's just not a lot of people on this planet that size. You also have to look at what other free agents, what other college. We knew this year, offensive tackle-wise, was a little light. And so we thought that would push him a little bit. But that conversation was, look, we had some teams that bought in, some teams that didn't. Some saw him this way, some saw him that. But it didn't make us deviate at all from what we thought, which was that he was going to be a starter and he was going to command this money. And it came in that. But just for us, that's our guiding light, is to just be honest and direct with players and families and with teams. The only way to be.
Yep. So another question here from Randall Cooper. He says, given the upfront costs and considering that player can fire an agent at any time, how does an agent protect him or herself financially, assuming the standard representation agreement doesn't do so? So I guess I'll go to you first, Jordan. When you guys sign a player out of college, right, they're signing an SRA, a standard representation agreement. And in there, at least much of the time, there's language in there that, hey, if a player does fire you before, X, Y, Z handles that. But without going too much into maybe the contract piece, how do you guys, Jordan, at Element, kind of either protect yourself or make sure that situation doesn't arise for you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a very risky moment, right? But like you said, in our contract, it would say, if you fire us under these circumstances, then, and normally what happens is if they go to a new agent, the new agent would then compensate you your original investment. That's usually how it works. You hope that you have a conversation, the guy well enough that, that's not going to happen. You do a great job in pre-draft to where you don't think that's going to happen. But fortunately, that hasn't happened since I've been around at Element. So I'm not really sure, outside of having that language in your contract that, hey, if you fire us before this point, you will be compensated in some way. I really don't know how you protect yourself other than that. I think if they fire you after you negotiate that first contract, then your investment is your investment. You got what you paid for.
Yeah, Molly, I'll go to you next. Even beyond that, how operating an agency like a business, right? You always want to have ways to hedge or make sure that you're not going to be, financially insolvent after one bad draft class. Do you guys have any strategies, things you guys do, whether it's in recruiting and signing a player or other things you guys are doing, maybe protect yourself from having, one bad year to find the agency?
The short answer to that is no, because it is such just a risky business that, kind of like Jordan said, that waiver that I think we all use at this point that protects you in that one scenario, to where if they fire you at a certain point, you get to recoup the cost. You don't even know if you're going to get the cost back under that, because it's a legal document that they still have to have the money to pay you it back if, they don't have an agent that's willing to pay the money back. And a lot of times when a guy does fire you at that point, which again, I'm lucky like Jordan, I've never experienced it, but it's usually because they didn't get drafted or they didn't go as high as they thought they would. So it's usually not a player that's going to be highly sought after in the way that an agent's going to want to invest that money into him for the second time. So, I think having a diverse client list helps, and not just depending on, a couple really top guys, but really trying to find your footing in that middle class of the NFL is really helpful, because if you have those guys, who are maybe in the $4 to $9 million range, while that might not be making super big headlines, it is at least bringing in sustainable commission for you and your company, to where you're able to keep signing players and pay for their training and stuff. And I think one thing that is smart for agencies to do, like we represent Julie Ertz, who's on the U.S. women's national soccer team. And so we just do her marketing, and finding clients like that where you're not putting money into them up front and you really do just make, commission when you do find them business. Being able to diversify your client list in that way too is really helpful, because all the football players, unless you sign them as veterans, are going to require that investment up front.
Yeah, you guys in the call can do the math here a little bit, right? You get a guy who's a draft pick and he's making $600,000, $700,000 in that rookie deal. You put 25, 30, 40 grand in, and if those guys don't hit, you got to recoup that someplace else. And as you guys have a Caric, right? You've got a couple of guys that on their second and third contracts that cash flow kind of funds the rest of it and allows you a profit. But it's a lot of diversification is important. Jeff, as the elder statesman, as you put yourself earlier on the call, how do you guys kind of handle that financial risk assessment in recruiting as well as overall day-to-day as an agency?
Well, first and foremost, you better be right more than you're wrong, and or you'll be out of business really, really quickly. And to Molly's point earlier, it's information. Information is is what really makes this business go. And so with that, you need great relationships with folks like yourself and obviously scouts and personnel. Because if you're too wrong too often, you won't be doing this for too long. And so, we're very, very methodical and very kind of consistent in the players that we sign and the families that we get involved with. Obviously, you're looking for players who are going to get drafted, high. And I say high, first 3 rounds. You want to find players, of course, you think that are going to be able to get a second contract and possibly a third contract. But here's the thing: in this industry, you never know, because look, it's a business where players get hurt and players get injured. And so one year you think you got a guy who's going to be a really big revenue generator because of his first couple of years, and the next thing you know, he's not playing anymore. He's had to retire because of an injury or something. And so you better be right more than wrong. And then diversification is the key. And look, not to kind of talk too much about the industry but there's a real downward pressure on the agent fees, as we all know. And so, you go in most living rooms now and, agents are doing the deals for free, and, I'll do it for free, and I'll wash your car, and I'll come by and cook your family lunch and dinner. And you have to compete with that, right? I go in the living rooms, Molly and Jordan know I'm right. You go in and people are like, well, the last agent said they're going to do it for free and give me $100,000. And so that downward pressure is real. And so the whole idea of diversification of that's the reason that we're doing other sports. The reason that we're jumping into basketball, and that's the reason that we have tennis players that we do marketing for, and boxers and the like, is because this is first and foremost, make no mistake about it. I know it seems it's glamour and lights and Super Bowl parties and the Hula Bowl and the holiday. But at the end of the day, we all doing this, yeah, because we love it and we love the players, but it's a business. This is how we all feed our families. And if it doesn't work, then, we all gonna have to go get jobs and do something else. But it's a business. It's real.
Yeah. And for those on the call too, agent fees are 3% usually for NFL agents, but you can reduce those now. In the last couple of years, they started having that where you can reduce it down to 1%, or there's one player I know at least that got an agent fee of $1 to sign with them, and a lot of money up front as well. So pretty common. So we'll end on this question. I appreciate the questions, and Molly, Jordan, Jeff, really appreciate you guys coming on and joining me in this discussion. It was great. But I know, Jordan, you'll go first, so I know you got to get out of here for an 8:00 call. But each one of you guys, give me a recent story, recent in the last couple days, couple weeks, couple months, or a situation that happened that reminded you, as Jeff pointed out, why you love this job, why you are so happy to be an agent. Something either small or big. I know for me, 4 weeks ago, I watched the BYU game and I saw Zach Wilson, the quarterback. I saw how special that guy was, and I called 4 or 5 teams right away saying, I found the next Pat Mahomes. That was exciting for me to kind of remind me why I love my job. So, Jordan, to start with you, recent story situation that reminded you, even something small, of why you love being an agent.
I think a really good story that comes to mind is, and I'll go back to the draft, because that's like the big moment, right? When guys get drafted, their dreams come true. And I'll talk about Darrington Evans, a running back out of App State that we had this year. And he, came out of a small school, came out as a junior. And it was funny because I talked at the Senior Bowl, I talked to a scout. I won't say what team he was, but he said, let me know if, Darrington falls through the cracks, right? He's coming out of the Sun Belt and everything. And Darrington's a great guy. And he followed our directions to a T. And, he ran the second fastest time at the combine for running backs in the 40. He just did everything right. Interview's great. If you're ever going to meet him, he's awesome. But long story short is he did everything he was supposed to do. I had that scout say he might fall through the cracks, and he went in the third round. He was a top 90 pick, and he was the highest selected running back out of the Sun Belt in Sun Belt history. So that was just an excellent moment. And I don't know. It was just one of those things that makes you jump out of your seat in excitement. So that was a cool story.
And now you get to talk shit to that scout for a long time.
Oh,
so
definitely.
Win-win. So
definitely.
Win-win. So Molly, how about you?
I feel like I'm going to tell the same story he just told, but I had a running back this year who he was coming out of UCLA, but he had transferred. Well, actually, he didn't transfer like in the traditional way. He left UC Davis because of a coaching change, and he was basically told by the school, you only can go to UCLA or USC because we play the other California schools in the next couple of years, because that UC Davis is really going to compete with those other schools. But anyway, he leaves, bets on himself at UCLA, had to bang down the door, walk on, ended up earning a scholarship, had 2 really good back-to-back years. He's actually my personal first draft pick. And not only did he go infinitely higher than he was supposed to, he went in the top of the 4th round, and was projected to maybe go in like the 6th or 7th before the pre-draft process. But just watching him, he got a late Senior Bowl invite, killed it there. In my opinion, still should have been the MVP. And then kills it at the combine, runs way faster than everyone says he's going to do. Just seeing him personally put in that hard work. And then when the draft rolls around, not only did he go at the top of 4th, way higher than most teams had him, he gets drafted to the Chargers, and he was born in Inglewood and gets to wear the same colors, gets to wear the same number. His mom's going to get to go to all of his games, when this is all said and done. And when you see and these are the bigger moments, I will say I think there's more lows than highs in this business. But the highs in those moments when you get the video or you're in the room with them when they get the call and you see the whole family, you just feel like all the stuff you put up with and you do is worth it. Especially when they exceed expectations. Cause like Jordan said, and like you were saying, it is nice to be able to go and say, listen, I believed in my client from the jump, and I know it's an opinion-based business. I get it. But just seeing them get to experience that and see the fruits of their labor, because with him, it really was a situation where he earned it. He worked his butt off. So it was my personal high of my career because it was my first draft pick, but also just the serendipitous nature of all of it, how it came together was really special.
That's awesome. Jeff, we'll go to you last. I know we're past 8 o'clock here. So, but what's something that recently happened to you that reminds you why I love being an agent?
I'll be real quick with it. Just we've had a couple of former players that have gone on to really do some really successful, meaningful things in life after football. And so one of our former clients, Tony Washington, played at App State, played in the league for 4 or 5 years, always was hurt, bounced around, really sharp guy, smart guy. He gets done a couple of years ago. He calls me. He's like, look, we got to move on. What are we going to do? I'm like, well, what do you really want to do? He says, I want to coach. Okay. I'm like, well, let's call your college coach who was at App State, who had gone now to Louisville. Tony calls him. Of course, he says, I'll hire you tomorrow. Come to Louisville. He gets in the car with his wife. They drive to Louisville. He's a grad assistant for a year. He calls me and he's like, look, Coastal Carolina has a job opening for receivers coach. And he goes, I think they won't never hire me. I've only been a grad assistant for a year. And I'm like, listen, let's work on it. We worked on the application. We did the interview, training, everything. And he got hired. And his receivers at Coastal Carolina, and I know a lot of it has to do with him. He's got a really good group, but it just warms my heart because he's a guy who just never really had the NFL success that you would want because of injuries. But he's gone on to just really do some great things. So we talk weekly. After every Coastal Carolina game, he'll call me and we'll talk. But it's just great to see a guy really kind of using the football, the NFL as kind of a jump-off point, a leverage point to really go on and do some really great things in life after football. So it kind of warms my heart to see him doing great things.
That's awesome. Well, Molly, Jeff, and Jordan had to hop off, but really appreciate you guys coming on here, staying with us for an hour and sharing a lot of insight. I hope I didn't get too deep and too personal, but you guys were awesome, and hopefully everyone on the call learned a lot from it. But thank you guys again, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having us.